Everyone, how's it going? I'll be going over the patch 16.4 slides, and I'll be talking about the changes, what I expect to be good in the meta, and what the changes are going to be. So yeah, I'm live on Twitch right now, but I'll be recording this for my YouTube. So getting right into it, we have the first change, which is a level 7 odds change to try to incentivize more people to play like 3-cost reroll. They're buffing the level 7 3-cost odds by 3%, which it should help 3-cost reroll a little bit. I think something like Draven reroll might make a comeback. I don't know if 3-cost reroll will be like super meta, but should help stuff like Draven reroll a little bit. Probably the biggest change of the patch is the leveling cost change. They reverted the change, made level 9 6 XP cheaper, which is going to make level 9 probably like the default way to cap your board again, instead of rerolling for like 3-star 4-cost. And it should definitely help Fast 9 strategies a lot. Stuff like Rise, Ziggs, those kinds of units should get a lot of help from this change. So should be back to the old way that we used to play. Kennen star level is like a nice quality of life change. Probably like a small buff to Yordle opener, because a lot of the time in Yordle opener you need like 3 upgrades to unlock Kennen. But I don't really think this changes too much. It's mostly like a quality of life thing. And this Tomcat Serpents change is actually a pretty nice change for Bilgewater. It should help a little bit. Also, like Rise Bilgewater should help a little bit to make sure that you can unlock Tahm Kench like before the neutral. So I would say that those two comps are definitely getting like a bit of a buff from this. Anyways, getting into the traits, Ionia Path of Blades is getting quite a small buff. I still think this is the worst Ionia by far. I think for this trait to be like playable in Yunar, the number would literally need to be like 30, 50, 70. So don't play Path of Blades, and if you do play it, probably try not to play more than like 3 Ionia. I think this is still very underwhelming, because if you think about it, Path of Blades is really only buffing your Yunara versus like something like a Path of Spirits is buffing every single Ionia unit on your board. It's giving tons of HP to your Wukong, HP, AD, AP to your set. Versus this Path of Blades, it only really helps your Yunara at all on the board. So because of that, it's like a really like an Ionia that you don't want to play around. And yeah, I think this buff is just too small. Gunslinger is getting a small buff to 2 and a slightly bigger buff to 4. I don't really think this is going to change too much about the trait. Gunslinger is actually a pretty nice early game trait, like with Jhin, because it does flat damage. So in the early game, it can be pretty nice and maybe a bit less impactful in the late game. But yeah, I don't think this is going to change too much. This is also another kind of small buff to Bilgewater, though, because Bilgewater is obviously playing around Misfortune. Piltover mods are getting some rebalancing. Small nerf to Blast Shield, small buff to Overclock Capacitor, small buff to Tuned Oscillator, small nerf to Acceleration Gate, and small buff to the tank ones. I would say that Overclock Capacitor and Tuned Oscillator, you're probably still not taking them very often. Blast Shield is probably still the best default Piltover module. Maybe there can be some scenarios where you have like a ton of like healing and shielding in your comp that you can think about Oscillator. I still don't really ever see myself taking the Overclock Capacitor, because it's really slow, right? You don't get the attack speed for 8 seconds. Acceleration Gate should still be really good for like Lysandra Seraphine. And I think that these tank ones are actually like a little bit better, especially if you have some sort of like a Piltover emblem that you can use it as like a tank item combined with one of these tank modules. So I think this should actually help a little bit. Overall, I think the 2 Piltover modules should be quite similar to before. Getting into the 1 and 2 costs, Jhin is getting a small buff, which I'm a bit surprised by. I feel like Ionia is actually one of the openers that you're already like kind of excited to play around. Maybe that's just because Ionia is a really good comp right now. But Jhin is getting a buff, and yeah, Ionia opener should definitely be a strong opener. I don't think this is going to make any sort of Jhin reroll viable, though. Sona's getting a small nerf to her spell heal. I think this actually hurts Sona reroll like quite a lot, because Sona reroll was about, you know, building like double Archangels and like stalling out the fights forever. So I don't want to say it's like completely dead, but it might be like a lot harder to play. It might be like an early learnings or like very specific augments only type of comp. Next we have Bard is getting some buffs. Ishtal reroll is already pretty much like an S tier comp with stuff like Too Much Value, Trade Sector, or maybe not Trade Sector, but Too Much Value and Priz Ticket. And yeah, I think with these Bard buffs, it's going to be definitely like one of the top comps of the patch. Anytime you see some sort of Trade Sector, Calc Loss, Too Much Value, Priz Ticket, you're like, people are always going to be looking to play like Ishtal Bard reroll every game. So I'm definitely predicting that to be like an S tier comp with this buff, because I think it was already really strong. Tristana 3 getting a small buff. Don't think this is going to change much. And Xin Zhao is getting a buff to him as a tank. I think he's still going to perform very similarly, which is he's pretty good in the early game, but he falls off very hard later in the game. So I think you are probably going to be pretty excited to like itemize him early, but he's not really going to be like viable as like a reroll or like a late game tank. Darius is getting a buff to his bleed duration, but a nerf to his bleed damage. I think Darius is like a little bit of like an underpowered unit, and this doesn't really seem like too big of a changes, so he's probably similar to he is right now. This Draven buff, 5 base AD, in conjunction with the 3 cost odds changes, I think Draven can definitely come back into the meta. I actually think Draven is like, I know it's like really bad in the stats. I don't think it's quite as bad as like the stats say right now. It's probably playable in some super niche scenarios, and yeah, I think like the combination of changes is going to really help Draven, and I think Draven can definitely come back into the meta, whether that's like reroll or like Draven past 9. Also with the level 9 being cheaper changes. Next, we have some Gwen buffs. Gwen 2 is already like a pretty solid unit to itemize in Shadow Isles. I don't know if this is going to make like Gwen a viable reroll. It does seem like the buff is also to 3-star is also pretty big. But I think, yeah, Gwen should be like a unit that's pretty good to itemize in Shadow Isles because I feel like she's already pretty solid, although maybe falls off a little bit late game. And Jinx is getting a bug fix and a spell damage change. It's kind of hard to tell whether this is a nerf or a buff. Kind of just depends how big that bug fix is going to be. Next, we have Ambessa. This is definitely a buff to Ambessa. She's going to deal a lot of extra bonus damage to tanks, and that's really what she struggles with right now, is getting through like really beefy tanks. She has, with items, she has no problem like killing backliners and like getting resets, but yeah, this is definitely a really big buff to Ambessa, so I think like Slayers will also be really good on the new patch. Lissandra is getting a buff. I think she actually kind of needed this buff. There's also a bug fix with Freljord, which we're going to see later. Freljord and Disruptor. But yeah, I think Lissandra 2 is like way worse than Seraphine 2 in the Lissandra Seraphine comp. So this is like a pretty chunky buff, but I do actually think that Lissandra kind of needed a buff, and hopefully she feels like a little bit better to itemize. I think this is like a good change. Rift Herald's getting a small nerf to the spell health gain. Especially on 2-star, it's a super small nerf. So I don't really think that this should affect like Void Kaisa or like Rift Herald too much as a tank. Maybe it just makes like your Rift Herald board like a little bit weaker on like stage 3. And finally, Yunar is getting like a spell attack speed nerf. This is like especially a nerf to like the Titans builds and like AP on Yunara, because AP becomes attack speed on her. So that's really what this is intending to nerf. And yeah, I do think this is going to hurt Yunara a little bit, but I do also think that the level 9 changes help her a little bit because she's a comp that really needs to go to level 9 and cap around like 5 costs. So I do think Yunara should be fine after this, and it's probably going to perform similarly to before. Lastly, we have some Aatrox buffs. He's getting a really huge Omnivamp to AD ratio. So yeah, I think like double healing on Aatrox can definitely be like pretty viable after this change, like BT Hodge or something. And those are the items that you're making to unlock him anyways. He's getting like a small nerf to 2-star Aatrox, but yeah, the fact that this is like a really huge buff to 1-star Aatrox, maybe you can actually unlock Aatrox in Slayers, and also with the Ambessa buff, I think Slayers should definitely be like a really solid comp on this patch. Ornn also getting a really huge buff to his extra HP per item equipped. Oh, sorry. And also to his chill duration, so maybe you can actually keep Ornn on your late game board sometimes, and he'll perform decently as a tank. Right now, you're pretty much always dropping Ornn in the late game, and you're only using him to print artifacts. T-Hex, these changes is basically meant to be a buff to the main target that he's hitting, but he should do the same amount of damage to backline. And there's also buffing some of the 2-star Hexmech stats. I think T-Hex is kind of in a weird spot where if you have like a Piltover emblem, it's like really easy to unlock him, and it's really easy to get like Mining Drill, and you're super excited to play around T-Hex. But without the Piltover emblem, it's super difficult. So I think, yeah, Piltover emblem into T-Hex is going to be like really good line, but otherwise I don't know if T-Hex is going to have like too much of a place. And lastly, Silas is getting a pretty big buff to his damage. I think Silas 1 is just like really hard to invest in, but also with the level 9 changes, maybe we could see some sort of like Silas Annie coming back. So, and yeah, lastly for the 5 cost, we have Asol is getting, they're kind of making it so that you need to play the Targons even more. Asol is already pretty niche right now. I think he's going to continue to be niche. I think it's probably a good thing for the game if Asol's pretty niche. Like if two people are playing Asol a game, just coin flipping their game on 3-5, that's probably not very good for the game. So yeah, I think these changes are fine. It does feel a little bit weird that you're supposed to instantly drop out of like Aphelios when the whole point of Asol is that you play like the vertical Targons to get him stacking. So yeah, I do like these changes. I think it might hurt Asol a little bit, which could be a bad thing, but I do think that maybe long term will be good. And yeah, some small changes. These are kind of just like bug fix things. Galio can now critically strike. Rise Spell no longer fizzles if the target dies. This tooltip. For some items and artifacts, I'm a big fan of this Gargoyle Stoneplate buff. Right now, Stoneplate is like probably the worst tank item. You're pretty much only building it in like Ishtal to unlock Skarner, or if you're just like forced to build it. So it's a pretty small buff. I think it'll still be one of the worst tank items, but it definitely is an item that needed a buff. Nashor's is getting a small nerf. I think Nashor's is kind of in a weird spot right now where like it's like a really bad item if you don't have JG, and then it's like the best mana item if you do have JG. And also you really want to like 2 Nashors is better than like 1 Nashors, when normally like if you have like one item, then you would rather like diversify your stats by building different items. So Nashors is in kind of a weird spot. It will still be probably the best mana item with JG, and probably like bad without JG, essentially. Warmog's also getting a buff. I think Warmog's is also one of the worst tank items, and yeah, I think it's good for Warmogs to get a buff. They're buffing the HP percentage, so it's definitely an item that you want to build on in the past, Warmogs used to be super strong on like 1-star units because a lot of the power was in the flat HP, but now so much of the power is in the percent HP that you almost want to build it on units with like very high base HP, like a Braum 2 or something. These Aegis artifacts are getting a small buff. They were like a little bit underpowered. They should be like just okay tank items. Same thing with Hull Crusher, should just be an okay tank item. Smoggle's Mail change is like a super small change. Sniper's Focus change is actually quite a large change. I think Sniper's Focus was one of the worst damage artifacts, and 3 mana regen should actually make it quite decent on casters. Like you could probably even just like play no mana item on like Lux, for example. You could do some sort of like KG Sniper's Focus plus like I don't know, like Archangels or something, and that would be like a pretty decent build with this plus 3 mana regen. So I think this is going to be like a pretty good change for Sniper's Focus. Now we have some new augments. Gilded Steel. Gain 3 non-tank 5-cost champions. If you field a 5-cost champion, your 1 to 4-cost champions gain 8% durability. I think this should be a super strong augment, especially with like Azir and Sharimans. You can imagine if you get like an Azir from your augment, which is super likely, 3 non-tank 5-cost champions. There's not that many non-tank 5-cost champions. And you're just giving all the durability to your like to your Renekton, to your Nasus. I think this is going to be like a super strong augment. This new Trials of Twilight, also I'm predicting this to be an extremely strong augment. It's basically Zahin augment plus like Heroic Grab Bag plus like a Bloodthirster. And Heroic is also one of the best augments that you can hit in Zahin, right? Because Zahin is all about making it to your 3-star as fast as possible. So I'm predicting this Prismatic Trials of Twilight to be like super OP. World Runes is coming back, gain 2 emblems, and gain 2 XP every player combat, increase to 4 XP or 4 more region traits are active. I think this will be like a decent augment, maybe, if you don't have any direction. I'm not really too sure how it's going to be. It's really incentivizing you to like go level 9 and play for Rise. I think it's kind of hard to say. I think it might be like slightly weak, but yeah, it's kind of hard to say until we like get our hands on. But I'm definitely predicting these first 2 augments to be super strong. Ascension, they're saying that this is a buff, but I actually think this is kind of a nerf to Ascension. I would still almost never take Ascension in like any scenario. Yeah, I think this change is actually kind of a nerf. Rumble Hero Augment is getting like a much needed buff. Not sure if this buff is enough to make it good. Chaos Magic getting disabled. Efficient Chopper granting 4 gold is a huge change. This might actually be quite a decent like Lost Streak Silver Augment now. Before it was one of the worst silver augments, but gaining 4 gold is like gaining half of a silver placebo, so this should be like quite a solid augment now. Commerce Core is getting probably like a bit of a nerf. It helps you hit your board faster on 4-2, but then your rerolls per turn is getting nerfed. And yeah, they were just trying to nerf a lot of the augments that were leading to 3-star 4 costs in this patch. So Epic Rolldown also getting a nerf. Um, Epic Rolldown should still be like pretty solid, especially with like Indecision into Epic Rolldown. Gives a lot of gold to hit your board on level 8. These Indecision nerfs are really big nerfs, getting nerfed by like 60%. I think Indecision is going to be an augment that you're kind of avoiding unless you're like literally like guaranteed to lose the next 3 rounds anyways. But I definitely don't see myself taking Indecision nearly as much after these nerfs. Prismatic Jeweled Lotus getting a nerf. It's still going to be good in the spots that it's good in, but it is quite a hefty nerf. Living Forge getting a buff. I think Living Forge is in kind of an awkward spot because it wants to be played with things like Echo or Warwick, but maybe those comps would rather just have like some other Prismatic Augment. So maybe this will help it a little bit. Like I could also see like Viego 2 opener might want to take like Living Forge. But I do think this is like not the biggest buff, and it's probably going to be like a pretty niche augment still. Max build is getting a nerf, a pretty large nerf. It gives more rerolls right away to help you hit like 2-star forecasts, but the champion duplicators come a little bit later. It should still be a pretty strong like bailout augment on 4-2 though, like if you need to hit your board. Honor roll no longer offered on 2-1. This is a really big change. A lot of like challenger players have been complaining that honor roll is like way too strong on 2-1, which it absolutely is. So I'm really glad that they removed it on 2-1, and even on 3-2 in reroll, it's like super strong. If you're playing something like Ishtal reroll, it's probably one of the best augments you can hit. But yeah, having it not offered on 2-1 is gonna be like a really nice change because it's pretty much giving you like prismatic ticket value as like a silver augment. Reinforcement getting a big nerf. I think it's okay for this augment to like have like a really bad average because if you think about it, it's kind of like a bailout augment, right? It's an augment you take when you're in a really bad spot or you're like heavily contested or something. Spirit of Redemption getting a nerf. Probably a pretty needed nerf. This augment just makes tanks like super unkillable in the early game. 3/3s also gave too much gold, so I'm agreeing with this nerf that it got. Twin Guardians getting a small buff. I think Twin Guardians is going to be like very nice in Ionia with like Wukong and Set. And yeah, that's it, I think, for the... Oh, yeah, just a few bug fixes. Yeah, the Disruptor damage amp with Freljord damage amp. But yeah, just some small bug fixes here, and that's going to be it for the patch notes. So overall, pretty small patch. I'm kind of predicting a lot of things that were good before to still be good. Still probably like a level 8, level 9 kind of meta, with the main reroll comp being like Ishtal reroll. And yeah, maybe we can see like Draven come back a little bit. Yunara should be in a similar spot. Warwick should be in a similar spot. Most of these like forecast, like Void, whatever type of comps should be pretty similarly good to before. So that's it. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.